McHargue CBS ESPN college football analyst joins us on 365 Sports. Taylor, thank you very much. What, in your opinion, has to happen for Oklahoma to beat Texas?
Well, a number of things. I think if they could get Quinn Ewers to start the game like he did last year, that would go a long way with the early turnovers. I think the model that Vanderbilt just rolled out against Alabama in a lot of ways is similar in any underdog situation, but especially for Oklahoma that's struggling on offense. You've got to maximize your possessions and you've got to dominate time of possession. You want Texas to have as few opportunities as possible with the ball in their hands, because if you get into any sort of track meet or quick scores and back and forth, that's going to favor Texas, because more often than not, they will get stops when they need them, and they will convert and get points on more drives on average than what Oklahoma would. What Vanderbilt did against Alabama a week ago was they held on to the football more than 40 minutes of time of possession, and then they capitalized when they got to the red zone. And I know that's easier said than done, but for Oklahoma, who's struggling to find those explosive plays specifically, staying on the field and then getting any sort of points when they get to the red zone, that's the recipe. And again, just trying to limit the opportunities that Texas has with the football.
Taylor, do you think that they can make enough big plays? Because even if their defense contains Texas, kind of like they contained Tennessee, at least overall points wise, if they can contain them to that, can they make enough big plays to keep it close without Deion Burks, without, I guess, Nick Anderson probably not playing either? All of that really makes it tough for them.
Yeah, well, with the two that you mentioned that are out, I would say no, probably not. I don't think it comes in the form of explosive plays. I think it's playing clean football, right? It's not having the penalties that have killed them in a couple key spots. The turnovers that they showed against Tennessee a few weeks ago, those are the two areas. And you could say this any week. I know these sound like football cliches, but in a game of this magnitude where there's so much emotion, crazy things happen in this game. I go back to last year where Texas, I think if they play that game 10 times, Texas wins it 8 or 9 times, but the amount of turnovers that they had created a situation where Oklahoma stays in the fight and then they end up winning that game. Texas this year on the other side of the ball specifically, it's a very different defense, and they don't give up a ton of explosives on the back end to begin with, especially against Oklahoma that has those key pieces that are out right now. I don't think it comes in the form of explosive plays. I think it's staying on the field, long sustained drives, if you can do that. And then again, when you get to the red zone, you cannot have the negative plays that push you back out of field goal range. Obviously, no red zone turnovers. And in some ways, try to make this sloppy and nasty. The other example I would use, what Arkansas did to Tennessee a week ago. High-powered offense in Tennessee. Arkansas, same situation, dominates time of possession and made that game into a brawl. And I thought in a lot of ways were more physical than Tennessee. That's the model for Oklahoma. They're not talented enough, this version of Oklahoma against Texas, to line up and go blow for blow for 4 quarters. Texas will win that game every time.
What does it say that we didn't even know Quinn Ewers was going to be playing officially until basically today, and that line was still what it was? That's just how good Texas is and how good Arch Manning looked, huh?
I think it's the depth with Arch Manning. There's no doubt. But I think it also just speaks to the depth that this Texas team has on both sides of the ball, and really up front. I mean, this is the best offensive line, in my opinion, that Texas has had since that 2009 team that Colt McCoy was the quarterback on. I think that the last time they had an offensive line that looked this good, that had this many NFL guys on it, and the depth behind their starters, and in the trenches on both sides, Sark has built this roster up to where even if you have a piece go down here or there, there's not a fall off. It looks like what Alabama and now Georgia have looked like for the last decade. That's what Texas roster looks like. And Oklahoma's not there right now with what Brent Venables in his second year taking over at Oklahoma. They're not there from a roster standpoint. They also missed on the quarterback running Dylan Gabriel out of town. I think is proving to be a mistake. And so this is as outmatched a team as I can remember on one side or the other. And I think that line is really giving Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt, because this game, as you guys know, a lot of times it's a one-score game. But I think this has the makings, the potential to be one of those where it ends up being a blowout and lopsided in Texas' favor.
Yeah, no, they just have so much firepower. I keep hearing about Oklahoma's defense. I've watched it a little bit. Tennessee seemed to move the ball against them pretty well, and I know that they're pretty good. And well, Arkansas said otherwise, but I don't know how they have enough firepower to stay with us unless Texas just drops it on the ground a couple of times, or a block punt, or a muff punt, or maybe even a kick or a punt return. Kansas State, Colorado. Taylor, I love this matchup. I can't wait. I'm going to just sit back and watch college football throughout the day on Saturday. We have no pregame. There's no other game to cover. Your thoughts about that one?
Well, if you had asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would have said, favor Kansas State by a couple touchdowns. They're more physical. And then fast forward 2 weeks, and especially Colorado getting it was a big win against Central Florida. They look a lot more physical than they did at the first part of the season. And I know Kansas State's still the favorite at last I saw, it was about a field goal. But this should be both 4-1. Playing at Colorado is difficult. The environment that they've created, the Coach Prime and everything that comes with that, it's a difficult place to go play. But if there is a style of play that can transfer well on the road, it's having a mobile quarterback, which Kansas State obviously does. So, look, I think this is one of the more intriguing matchups of the entire weekend that's sort of flown under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And what will be great is it's that late window, right? It's a 9:15 Central kick time. So it's going to be anybody that's still awake, and obviously the West Coast will be tuning into this. But of all the great college football that we have this weekend, Oregon and Ohio State with the primetime slot, this will be, in my opinion, one of the best games we have all weekend.
Taylor, what do you think about not USC, Oregon and Ohio State? Ohio State's the deepest team in the country. In fact, Will Howard's probably the least talented player, and I say that in air quotes, that they have. They're amazingly good. Kind of remind me of Ken Dorsey in that 0-1 Miami team, where he's a pretty good player, but didn't have to be the best because he was surrounded by so much. Does Oregon have the depth to hang with them? They certainly have the coaching, and they have some splash players, but this Ohio State team looks really, really good.
This is the other team that, from a roster standpoint, I think Ohio State and Texas may have deeper rosters than Georgia and Alabama do this year. And for Alabama, I don't think that's that much of a shock at this point, but even Georgia, Ohio State, go down the line. I mean, it is 5-star after 5-star, and they are playing like it. And they also answered the bell against Michigan State a couple weeks ago, where they don't play anybody, so to speak, in all of non-conference, and then they roll out and smash Michigan State and dominate both sides of the line of scrimmage. And that, to me, is the biggest thing that I'm looking for against Oregon. A few weeks ago, and I realized they have Ashton Genty, but I thought Boise State did a really nice job on the offensive line of pushing around Oregon in specific spots. And if they don't get that corrected, Ohio State is going to come in and run the football down Oregon's throat if they play with that same level of physicality that they showed against Boise State. And I agree, the depth just across the board. Jeremiah Smith on the outside, Quinshon Judkins, the transfer from Ole Miss, he's been fantastic. And it's funny how you say it, Will Howard, he's the most underrated, or he's not the flashiest player on their roster, and he's still one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So this is a really good team. This will be a test for Ohio State going on the road to Autzen that is a lot different than, I know they played well at Michigan State, but they got up so big so early against Michigan State, that crowd wasn't really a factor. Autzen at night at Oregon, that's one of the hardest places in college football to play. It's not even that big of a crowd. I think it's less than 60,000 people in that stadium. But when it gets going, it is one of the loudest places in college football. And this is going to be, man, you tack this on to the night slate after Red River rivalry. I mean, this is as good as it gets in college football.
Taylor, amongst the games that are, I guess, the most talked about us, I think we touched on all of them. The other one, because obviously we talk a lot of Big 12 here, I'm not sure how much you got your eyes on Iowa State or West Virginia, but the Cyclones unbeaten heading into Morgantown, West Virginia 2-0 in the Big 12. Have you been able to see much of Rocco Becht or Garrett Green, or just either one of these teams in particular? And if so, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, much more on Iowa State. We had them 3 weeks ago against Arkansas State, and it was against a team that they were heavy favorites, and they played like the favorites. What's impressed me about them is their ability to not win ugly, but go back to the game against Baylor. Baylor kind of punched them in the mouth early, built up that first half lead, and Iowa State didn't flinch. Ended up winning by 20 against Houston. Sort of a similar situation. Didn't play great in the first half, but they are never really out of the fight, and that's going to be key against West Virginia. Is West Virginia, same situation. If they get out to an early lead, they got to recognize this is not a team that's going to go away. And the thing that I go back to, the tight end for Iowa State was a freshman All-American a year ago. Rocco Beck, player of the year in the Big 12 from the quarterback spot as a freshman a year ago, or freshman player of the year, I should say. They have experience, but they're still young. A lot of these guys are sophomores and juniors that are in the key spots, but a lot of them played as freshmen and sophomores. And so it's an interesting dynamic where you may look out there and say, oh, they've still got some youth, but they're not playing like it, and they don't really beat themselves. So I know a lot more and paid a little closer attention to Iowa State. I thought it was interesting that this is it's a close line. I think it was 2 or 3 the last time I looked. And I think Iowa State is the more talented team. But again, you're going on the road in Morgantown. We talk about tough places to play. It's another one that's going to be a tough place to play. I think that's a night kick as well. So they'll have all day. The fans in Morgantown will be well liquored up, I'm sure. But man, this is another one that it's just, I keep saying it, but it's such a great day of college football.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And the benefit of Baylor being off, and particularly for us, we can really like check out and just watch everything, not like shuffle into a stadium or anything like that. So very much looking forward to having a slate like this on a weekend where there's a little bit more freedom. But you had a tweet from a few days ago. You were going to Wyoming to broadcast a game. How was the experience?
Right. That's coming up. I put that out this week. Yeah, we've got San Diego State and Wyoming this week, and it's on. We're the same kick time as Red River rivalry. So, look, I recognize where we're at on the totem pole. So just have us on that secondary screen. Keep eyes on our game because I think this will be a good one. 2 teams in the Mountain West that slow starts this season, but both coming off a win last week. But I've never been to Laramie. Well, everybody else on the CBS crew keeps calling it Laradice. So I'm looking forward to the trip, and it'll be a first time for me going to really the entire state of Wyoming.
Taylor, thank you. Great to have you on. Appreciate you being on today. Normally Wednesdays, you needed to do today. We made that happen in a packed schedule. Taylor McHargue with us.